I guess we'll start with the company stuff. I started Textbook Painting. We're based in Cleveland, Ohio. Started the company back in 2006, right after I graduated from college. I had worked with one of the college painting companies in school for 4 years, and then didn't want to go get a real job, I guess, and decided to do this for a little while. And here we are. I don't know what, almost 18 years, I guess, now, and
Time
things are
flies.
going well. No kidding. So things are going well, growing a lot, a lot of credit to our team and things like that.
Hmm.
We basically do residential repaints with some commercial work. We specialize in cabinet refinishing. We do a lot of that. All employees. So that's kind of the company side of things. Married, my wife and I met in college. So we've got married right after college as well. So the business
Wow.
and our marriage kind of tracks. So it's easy to remember the anniversaries and stuff.
That
So
helps.
yeah, almost 18 years there. And then we have two kids. I've got an 11-year-old daughter, as we're recording here. So she's 11
Hmm.
and my son is 8. And yeah, we love it. It's a lot of fun. They're in that perfect age of, still like hanging out with dad some. And
Right.
I get to coach them in their sports and their things and stuff like that. So it's
I
great.
love that. So you're keeping busy, but you're also clearly finding time to make family life important. I mean, if you're able to, coach your kids' softball or baseball teams, you're making that a priority, and that's huge.
Yeah, I'd say that's my number one thing. Like if I could just coach baseball and softball all day, that would be, I'd be down for that, but that doesn't necessarily pay the bills. So, gotta
No.
come into the office and get some work done too.
I'm gonna find that balance. I have to ask you, you've got a really interesting sign behind you, Murray for Congress. Is that a sign that you represents you or you found it somewhere?
Nope. So that one, I've got a couple, depending on like how zoomed in I am here, I've got one that says Mike Murray for judge. So that's one of the fun things about having a common first and last name. There's a lot of not so great things about it, I guess. But so no, that one is actually really old. My uncle had that in his like college dorm
Oh,
back in like the
cool.
early 80s or whatever it would have been. He found that, side of the highway somewhere, grabbed it and passed it on to me. I had that up in my college dorm when I was in school. And then not surprisingly, my wife didn't really have a place for that in our house, so it became part of my video background here recently.
She's like, you can take that to the podcast room.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love it.
you gotta have the
That's fun.
background, right?
You do.
Yeah.
The
So
background is important. And yours is cool. I mean, so often these days people are putting up virtual backgrounds and I mean it's fake, but you've got a really cool
yeah,
background that actually is legit. It's
yeah.
real life.
I've got my one of the Summit Award things that we won back there, and I try to have all
Oh,
sorts of different stuff that
I do see that. Business
represents
excellence, I
me.
think.
Yeah, yeah. So
Nice.
a lot of I've got a baseball bobblehead. I've got some books that I really like and different, I don't know, some, I'm a Christian, so there's some Christian stuff back there and just different
Mhm.
things. So when people come into the office, it gives me some stuff to talk about. And I don't know, I just like to collect little mementos and visual
Totally.
cues and reminders. But
It's a good
yeah,
conversation
anyways,
starter.
yeah, here we are, right?
Here we are. I got our
Talking
conversation
about it.
going. Yeah. Well, speaking of virtual backgrounds, we'll hit on this term virtual right now because there's been a kind of a growing world of using the term VAs in the industry, and it's something that we know here at NCG we're getting asked about it. We have clients starting to use VAs, which you'll refer to as offshore talent, and so I know that this is a world that you are, a little bit more familiar with. You're utilizing this
Mhm.
talent, and was like, can we have a conversation about it? Like, I need to be informed here, and so I appreciate you taking the time to kind of bring me into this new world. But first,
Yeah, no,
you
I'm
know,
excited.
the term VA, I said to you right before we got started here, is it okay if I slip and use the term VA here on occasion? I'm really going to aim for offshore talent because I respect that entirely. But tell me, let's maybe just start there. The term VA, virtual assistant, versus, now you shifting into this offshore talent name for it. Where does that come from? And why are you so passionate about that?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess, I think it's just like understanding. I think the term VA can be limiting, so I've had a lot of conversations, at the Grand Summit, whatever, a couple months ago now, or just different business owners, in our industry, locally, business owners that I know that, have nothing to do with like the type of work we do. And one of the things that often people want to talk about is, overseas talent or VAs. We have a team of 5 currently. And I can talk more specifically about exactly what
Oh,
they do, but and so I think we've been doing this now for a few years, and one of the things that I've learned in doing it is that people overseas are really talented, that there are a lot of really skilled, highly educated people that don't live in the United States. And sometimes when I'm having conversations with people, the phrase of like VA is almost similar to like an intern or a helper, which I think is just, there's nothing necessarily wrong with it. I just feel like it's limiting. So I like to use a different term, whether it's like overseas talent or offshore talent or, global talent or things like that, just to try to like maybe help somebody reframe their mind as to like what is possible with this talent pool, basically.
Totally. No, I mean, it makes total sense to me. There's a connotation to the word assistant sometimes that, especially in the different levels of work, the talent that you're getting out of
Mhm.
these people, it's not like an admin assistant type level. I mean, there are VAs who are doing CFO level work or operational. I mean, it's a lot larger than what
Sure.
we think. So you're right. It's totally a limiting statement.
And it can
When
be. I
did
mean, yeah, sorry, just real quick. We have, I
Yeah.
mean, as we talked, I mean, maybe we'll get into it, but we have a couple people with like assistant in their title
Mhm.
overseas. And very much what they do is in that, like, assisting other team members. But to your point, like we've interviewed, we've brought in different people with all sorts of talent, backgrounds, master's degree, CPAs, things like that are certainly available overseas, and they're looking for full-time opportunities, and they want to be a part of American companies perhaps,
Mhm.
and stuff like that. So yeah, that's all. I think it's just like a broadening of it,
Yeah.
of the mindset.
When did you start becoming interested in this as a kind of a path for your hiring strategy?
So I would say even before COVID, I was interested in learning about it. I was fascinated
Mhm.
by it. I thought it was like a positive thing, but I really didn't know how to do it. I didn't know where to start. I had more questions than answers. Probably like a lot of people that are listening, you're like, man, this sounds really cool. I've heard other people do this, and I don't know where to start, and I
Totally.
don't
Where
know.
do I begin? Where do
Yeah,
where do I even begin looking online for
for
something
sure.
like this?
Yep. And so, I mean, I would say probably even back to like 2018 or so, I was like trying to learn about it and trying to self-educate, and just like everything, it's like one more project. I'm too busy. I'll get to this someday. And then, so if we fast forward to 2021, I guess, 2022, somewhere in there,
Mm.
I found that I had time. It was like summer, things were going well, business was good. I didn't really need to, if I knew that if I got too involved, I was going to end up like almost like breaking things on purpose in the business just to give myself something to go fix and do. And I think, some of the entrepreneurs listening,
The
I think
team is
can
like,
probably relate to
stay
that.
out of the office.
Yes. Yep. Stay out of the way. We got this. And
Yeah.
so I was like, you know what? I'm going to actually do this thing. And the main reason I wanted to do it is because I knew we had to be better at delegating and documenting and systematizing the business.
Mhm.
And I knew that this would be like the final like deadline. If we were going to hire people overseas, we had to do those things. We had to document our processes. We had to simplify our systems. We were going to have to come up with some of the playbooks and things like that. Otherwise, it just wasn't going to work. And so that was actually like my main impetus. It wasn't to necessarily save money. It wasn't necessarily to, maybe solve like big problems that I saw within the company, other than I knew we had to better systematize, document, be able to train people better without having the like, just come sit with me for weeks and I'll teach you how we do things here. We need to have some reference materials. And so I knew once we hired somebody overseas, it would force me to actually get those things done.
Got it. It was almost like an
Yeah.
accountability now, like that
Mhm.
we're doing this and this is not going to work if I don't kind of pull my weight on this side of the project.
Yep.
Interesting.
And so the way I did that actually is I reached out to this guy on Twitter that I had followed for a while, and he was like, somebody I was learning from. He was doing this world, right, hiring people from overseas, and they were working in his small business, and he often was like talking about it on Twitter. And I reached out to him and essentially hired him as a consultant to teach me how to do it, and like just
Oh,
to
wow.
kind of hold my hand through the whole thing. And so, credit to him. I mean, that's where I learned a lot of like I would say like the nuance of exactly like what to do, how to do it, how to like set things up, what software to use, how do we pay these people, and a lot of the things that again were just like really intimidating and preventing me from just taking that leap and actually doing it.
Do you think that's still something like, is there more information out now about how to do this correctly than there was maybe like, 2 years ago that somebody who's also interested in this maybe needs to go that consultant route to help them get started? Or do you think there's enough information out there that you could figure it out yourself?
Yeah, I think for sure. I mean, depending on the level of detail we want to talk about today, I mean, I can give people that information. I've done
Love
that
it.
before. Yeah, I mean, I've gone to some of my friends' companies and I meet with their leadership team for hour and a half, and it's just like, here's exactly how you do it, what to do, how to pay them, answer their questions. And so we
Mhm.
can certainly get into some of that detail as time allows today. I think the one thing I always like to say is that like, just like hiring local talent, we quickly learn, we think it's like, if I need to hire, let's just say like, we're going to hire our first person to work in the office. We're a year or two in and we're like, I need some help. And it's like, oh man, I got to hire somebody. This is going to be so hard. And we do it and we realize hiring the person wasn't actually the hard part. It's managing them and, communicating with them and having systems and, they have expectations and needs and, all the things. And that is the same. It's the same thing with overseas talent. It's just different, like I talked about, because it's much more like asynchronous. There's time zone constraints. There's, I don't want to have to be on a Zoom call with somebody overseas answering their questions of like, what should I do next? How do I do this? Somebody asked me this question.
No, yeah,
Right. And so
totally.
that's where it's like, okay, we've got to document these things, and which has only made us a better company in terms of having local talent just as much as well. Because, when we hire somebody, they don't want to come to us all the time and ask what they should do next and how do they do things.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, like as much as we've all read the E-Myth and things like that, we're not always maybe great at documenting and delegating.
For
And
sure.
so, again, like that's the hard part of this. It's not necessarily the hiring. Although that's where a lot of the questions start of like just the nuts and bolts of how do we hire these people? How do we pay them? Taxes, all those types of things.
Yeah. But that makes it such a good point that I mean, kind of like a lot of things, they only work if you've got the other kind of tools lined up or the systems lined up for this machine to actually be able to run. When you were thinking about roles, like for your first hire here, I mean, what are the typical types of roles that you're hiring this overseas talent for in the
Yeah.
office?
Yeah. So I think this would be a good place to talk about what our team does currently, just to
Love it.
give some context. One of the favorite things when I talk to others that have like even bigger teams, 10, 20 people overseas, I'm always like, what do they do? Help me like expand my brain as to what is possible. So I'll say this, the first thing that we hired somebody to do was a recruiting assistant position, essentially like just going through all the Indeed applications and scheduling people to come in for interviews. So that was the first thing we did. It was very small in scope so that I could get my arms around it. We could create some systems and processes around it and like quickly realized that we needed more for this person to do because they were really, they were good at it. And when you actually have
Yeah.
somebody focused on one thing, it's like going to happen better. I'll say like broadly, if it can be done on the computer or over the phone, it probably doesn't need to be done locally. It doesn't mean
Okay.
it has to be done overseas. Again, if it's on the computer, somebody doesn't need to be sitting in the office doing that. And we now know that from COVID, right? This, the movement for work from home. It's like, if you could do this job from home, you could do this job from anywhere. And that's what
Absolutely.
we saw in 2020. So let's just talk about the roles that we have. So the first person I'll talk about on our team is Erna. She was our first hire actually, so 2.5 years or whatever that is now, and certainly worked out well that our first hire was a great one.
Yeah.
Erna's a rock star. She started in like again that really limited role. Today, she functions in two big capacities. So I would say like she is the main supervisor of what we call our global team, but that's
Okay.
again everybody that's not local. So essentially the other four people that are overseas. For us, almost all of our overseas people are in the Philippines, except one who's in Indonesia. But we would definitely love to hire people from different parts of the world, specifically like places in like Central or South America where time zones line up a little bit better.
Right.
And, accents are a little bit different. We can maybe get into some of that nuance if there's time.
Mhm.
So what Erna does is functions as my executive assistant. So she runs my calendar, my email. She tries to keep me in line, which isn't easy, and tries to remind me of all the things that I'm forgetting to do with my ADD brain and all of it. And then does a lot with like recruiting. So, we have an HR person, but Erna kind of helps to assist in some of that, especially for like field members, might be scheduling interviews and screening out some of the like, whether it's like sales reps, office, some of those types of roles. And again, she hires all of our overseas team.
Oh, cool.
I basically do like final interviews, but she'll do like all of the narrowing of that applicant pool when we do post a role for overseas. And then again, she functions as their like direct manager. So she's in constant communication, answering questions and things like that, which really helps to
It's
kind of put a
huge.
buffer layer there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
And so Erna's in the Philippines.
correct.
Oh, okay. The relationship, like when you first started working with her, Zoom is great. We have video is great. We have the ability to connect that way. But so often, like we've lived in this world where like that in-person feel to be able to establish a relationship. Obviously, not easy to do when someone
For
lives in
sure.
the Philippines. What was that process like for you to really get to know her and make sure she was a good culture fit for your
Mhm.
team at the end of the day? Because whether they're in an office or they're not, it's impacting team culture, right?
Yeah, and and trust and all of the things, right? I mean, she has
Yeah.
access to my email and even some like credit card access and things like that, where it's like you can put limits, there's ways to do these things a little bit, and you certainly don't start there. I didn't. Just like anything, it takes time. I'll say in my opinion is like it takes a lot longer time to build that trust and relationship virtually than it does with somebody in person. I probably will get better at that as time goes, but that's still like time, like slow. It's still time consuming. I would say, part of it is just being intentional. So we have like scheduled calls about every day where we're on a Zoom call checking in. How can I, a lot of it is me asking her, how can I help you? Like what is as a like that servant leadership mentality, just
Yep.
like what can I do to get things out of your way here? What are you working on? What do you need from me? What emails did I forget to respond to or whatever? Things like that. A couple of things that we've also done, I think that were really intentional is like introducing her to the entire team. So we have a monthly all hands or like entire company meeting. And we've done this a few times as we've added overseas talent where we bring them, like we have the big TV screen and we put them on a Zoom call in front of our entire company with
Cool.
like the camera going, so they can see like the big room of all the people and we can see her. And, typically the way that we do that, we just like, it's kind of like me asking her questions about like, what's life like? Tell us about your family, a lot of the same kind of things that if you brought in a local person, and they're sitting with somebody that's been on your team for a little while, they'd be just like, what part of town are you from? And where'd you go to school? And, tell me about
Yeah.
your kids and whatever. And so we've done that virtually with them in front of the meeting, at these meetings. We utilize Slack, which is I think a great communication tool so that
Agreed.
they can be a part of like all the little, fun things that are kind of happening over Slack and all the little like accomplishments and, stuff like that. And so I think that like helps our local team feel comfortable with, Erna and some of the other people globally.
That's awesome. So talk to me about the other
Yeah.
people, there are four that she's currently managing.
Yeah, so Anthony is essentially the person who answers our phones. He does it's all inbound calls and he does some outbound calls, rescheduling appointments or like reaching out to maybe old projects or quotes or leads, trying to reactivate some of that kind of stuff. But basically, Anthony's on the phone. We've had people locally answering the phones. And like one of the challenges we realized as we really looked into the data is that too often our phones weren't being answered because somebody was busy or they weren't being
Mhm.
answered quickly enough. And so a year and a half or so ago, I said, we need somebody who can, like, their job is to answer the phone. So if the phone rings, answer it. And I don't want them to do anything else because oftentimes it's like, if you give somebody like, oh, I'm going to do a little social media and I'm going to do a little job costing, when the phone rings, it could be an unhappy customer or it could be a, spam or whatever. It's like, oh, I don't really, I'm just kind of busy doing my thing here. And that's not good.
No,
And
I mean
so,
you're a marketing guy and none of that,
yeah,
all that work that you're doing out there for marketing is means nothing if the phones aren't being answered when that
it's
customer's
expensive.
calling. Yeah.
So answer the
Answer the
damn phone.
phone. Yeah.
Yeah. So his job description is to answer the damn phone. He's great. I would say one of like the big fears I had, and I think probably everybody has when they're getting into this, is going to be around English and accents.
100%.
Um,
It's a
and
question I
so
had. This is great.
yeah, so we can probably talk about that since Anthony's answering the phones. Maybe not all at once, but you can call us and just find out what is it like. I've got friends, I talk to them and they're just like, there's no way. And then I find out that they're calling our office like every other day because they're telling their friends, like, you got to listen. So Anthony's really good. I don't believe he has much of an accent. I'm sure if you're really listening for it, that, just like everybody, whatever. I don't like what does it mean to not have an accent? I'm not really sure,
Correct.
but
If you're
I
from
don't,
somewhere, you've got an accent of
right,
that area.
right,
So
right.
it's so true.
Yeah, but it's not the experience. Like I am like nothing makes my blood boil more than when I call like AT&T and I can't communicate with the person that answers the phone
Yep.
about the simple problem I have. When we think about hiring somebody overseas to answer our phones, that's been the experience we've had as consumers.
Mhm.
And we're just like, oh my, I do not want my clients to feel that way because it is the worst experience in the world. And I can promise that is not at all what Anthony is like. But I think the biggest thing is giving him like the training and the tools and like the resources to be able to answer people's questions. Because if he sounds like incompetent and he has no idea, he sounds like an answering service. And that's when customers or potential customers are going to get super frustrated. If you can't answer some of like the basic questions, it's going to be a problem. So
Well,
again, that's
you're
where
immediately losing trust of the prospect on the other side of the phone.
100%. And I would love to hire somebody locally to do that role. We can't because of like the cost constraints, or just again, like we've had people in those roles and they quickly like are bored and they don't want to just be answering the phones anymore.
They want more. Yeah.
They want more, right? And it's just like, okay, great. Anthony's been doing it for us for about a year and a half now, and he, is taking on like more responsibilities, but it's still over like answering the phones or making up on calls or trying to do even some like cold calling, reaching out to maybe prospects or like large commercial projects. We give them a list and it's like, hey, when you've got some time, do that, but not in replacement of answering the phone when it rings.
Did you have to go through a couple applicants for this particular role, given what it's really important to you, the English
For sure.
communication and the accent to find Anthony, to make sure he was the right fit?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would say it is a skill that you have to look for. So
Mhm.
just like any other skill, whether it's, accounting or, working in Excel or QuickBooks or whatever, some people are really good at it. Some people aren't as good at it. And so, just like anything else, you need to evaluate for that. Part of our like initial applicant screening is we ask every applicant to record a 1-minute audio file, just answering like a really basic question. Tell us about yourself and why you think this could be a good fit. While we're listening for like to the answer, we're really just listening for like the English quality. And depending on the role, we're going to look for, not every role do we need like a 10 out of 10, where it's internal back office kind of stuff. It's not customer facing. Then I don't need perfect English. I need, to be able to communicate with the team and with me. But with somebody like Anthony's role, we're looking for that 10 out of 10. And oftentimes we don't even have an interview because from their initial audio file, it's just like, no, it's just too, accented or too difficult to understand, or
Mhm.
whatever the case is. But I will say, so again, that was my original fear. When I went into this, I thought, hey, we're never going to hire somebody customer facing. I don't want to give a bad customer experience. I would encourage anybody who's thinking about starting this, don't start there. That is a big bridge to jump over, with the whole idea that like your clients are interacting over the phone. You can imagine all the ways that can go wrong. Don't start there. You start with more of like the back office, not customer facing type roles. I think is a much better place to start. And it can be a good on-ramp to go and be kind of surprised, like, oh, wow, like there are a lot of people overseas that speak English. I think some of them better than me. So for what it's worth.
They've had the formal English training, and
That's right.
we just grew up,
Yes, as anybody listening
speaking like
can
our parents.
agree. I'm mumbling with my
Yeah.
high-pitched whiny voice. So
No, you're not. When
so
you
that's what
say
Anthony does. Yeah.
when you say back office, like not customer facing roles, does that include like emails to customers? Okay, so no customer interaction at the start.
Oh, sorry. No,
No.
I would be fine with that, because a lot of that
Okay.
can be templated. And
Okay.
so, or we can like review it, or, they can ask questions. The thing with the phone is that you have to be able to think on your feet. You can't say, I mean, you can, but it's just not a good experience if you're just like, you just asked me a question I've never heard before. Let me put you on hold for 10 minutes and I'm going to send a Slack message to somebody halfway around the world, and hopefully somebody's there to answer. It's just like, that's not
If
going
it
to work.
No.
Right. Where if it's like an email, it's not that like I don't have to respond in the next 20 seconds. Hey, I got this email. How do I handle this? How should I respond? Or here's a draft email of what I'm thinking. Does this work? And then again, hopefully what we're doing is building a database of when you get an email like this, here's a templated email of how to respond. And that is when we now get to the point of like, holy heck, like I can write every email, but I don't have to be the one to send it. Or I don't even have to be the one to read them anymore. Because I've trained somebody like, here's how to respond to somebody that needs a warranty claim, or, how do I get to the office, or again, whatever kind of common questions might come through.
I mean, it speaks to what you were saying at the beginning. Those are systems in place. Like those are communication systems, communication templates, which are huge.
For
I mean,
sure.
that's part of like the package of your business. Like one day you could decide, whatever you want to do with textbook painting, like you've got all of these layers in place that are like plug and play for somebody else.
100%.
So
Yeah.
it's
I
all
mean,
part of building value at the end of the day.
for sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm just working myself out of a job, which is the goal. And I think without our overseas team, I would not be anywhere near where I am with that as a goal. For one, because they're really talented, and two, because of what I said before, it's forced me to get better at doing that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, we've got Erna and Anthony. Who are the other players?
Yep. So Ivy does a lot of what we just talked about. So her title is sales assistant. And so,
Okay.
you can think like on the sales side, she handles all non-telephone inbound inquiries. So that's going to be web forms, web chat, emails, or, some emails depending on what inbox they're hitting and what they're looking for. But she's going to be scheduling estimates over text messages or over emails, things like that. And then she also works with our sales reps and assists them somewhat like an executive assistant might, where they can ask her to reschedule an appointment. Again, that's all going to happen through message, which is kind of a lot of like our client preference anyway. She helps with like CRM upkeep and management, maintenance, I guess. I don't know if it's just here at Textbook, but our sales reps aren't always the best at updating the CRM and,
You're not
keeping the
alone.
activities. And so her job is to just go in and she can say, hey, I noticed these 6 people don't have a next step agreement like scheduled in the CRM. Here's their names. If you tell me when you're scheduled to reach out to them, I will add that as a activity so that you get that reminder. And it's
Mhm.
like stuff like that is just like, it's kind of great.
Yeah, no.
So that's
It's
a
all
lot of
the
what she
things
does.
that we're kind of letting drop at, throughout our day is kind of where these individuals are coming in to support, which is
Sure.
huge. I
Yep.
mean, that only makes that like the efficiency in your business must be skyrocketing compared to what it was prior.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, to your point, like one of the things that we identified last year was a big issue was just like lead conversion. We get a lot of leads. We spend too much money on marketing probably. And we get a lot of leads even last year when, a lot of people on their mastermind calls are, talking about that's a struggle. We thought it was a struggle for us too, because our sales were struggling. And what we realized though is that we just had a lead conversion issue. And so we basically just pointed, we had the resources. We just said, Ivy, we want you to be a part of this solution. And I help come up with some systems and some, checkpoints of like, hey, if this person hasn't been scheduled, like, right away, then now she can like, instead of just automating that, she can manually reach out and have a conversation and make sure that we're still like getting people where they need to go, because we all get busy, right? It's, summertime,
Mhm.
spring, it's just like people are calling and they're busy. Everybody's busy.
Chaos.
It's chaos. And it's like too many things slip through the cracks. And that's where having somebody like in these types of roles can be really helpful.
That's fantastic. I mean, the sales guys have to love that,
For
or
sure.
the sales team.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. We have 2 females and 1 male, but
Yeah.
yep, exactly.
So sales
Uh,
team,
yeah.
I need to always
No, it's all
I
good.
can't say the sales guys because it's, it's
There you go. Andrew
typical.
and Jim, the sales
Andrew
guys.
and Jim, yeah, we're about to start your
Yeah.
a sales fundamental workshop, and
Yep.
the sales guys are getting going.
Yep.
What they
For sure.
say.
That's right.
All right. So besides next to Ivy, who else do we have?
Yep. So 2 more hit real quick. So Hannah, ops assistant. So kind of similar, but on the operation side. So we have a project
Okay.
coordinator, Courtney. Courtney's local. Courtney's on the phone all day long, talking to our clients, schedule updates and, welcome calls and letting people know like, hey, here's how you let us know your colors and all that kind of fun stuff. And so Hannah overseas, her job is to really assist Courtney in that. So again, anything that can be done over the computer.
Mhm.
She, for example, will download work orders out of Paint Scout, upload them into Slack so our team has access when they're not here. She does a lot of recruiting assistant type work for all of our field employees. We do like big group interviews. We get a lot of applications for painters. We've done that for years, but it takes a lot of work to go through hundreds, sometimes like 1,000 applicants every 2 weeks or whatever. And so she's scheduling all of those people through Indeed and through messaging. She does job costing. So again, it's a lot of like stuff that is after the sale is made, that can be done on the computer. That's not as directly customer facing. She does do like warranty scheduling and claims. So if somebody has a warranty issue, we ask them to send us a video using Groundwork, and then she goes in, gets the video, and puts it in the place where our team can see it,
Mhm.
and uses like gets into the schedule and figures out like when can we get somebody over there and puts that on the schedule, stuff like that.
Awesome. So we've got phones,
And then
sales, ops, and what's the final one?
Yep. So Maria is our most recent hire. She's been here a little bit under a year, and she's a marketing assistant.
Oh,
So she does
nice.
graphic design, video editing. She basically does all of our social media, all of our email marketing, and just a lot of other like marketing projects. You kind of mentioned it before. That's one of the roles that I still oversee in the company is marketing. And
Mhm.
so she really helps me to like do a lot of the doing where I kind of have the strategy and the vision. She's the one who can like make it look good.
Yeah.
Because I don't want like if I'm in Canva, it's going to take way too long and it's going to look like stick figures.
Feel ya.
So yeah, she's like really good with all that stuff
That's awesome. That's gotta be like big for you to like
for sure.
have that. I mean, the doing of marketing activities is just a lot of it's a time suck,
For sure.
especially if it's not like a skill set that you have. You're just like trying to move the ball forward.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
that's big.
Yeah.
So that's 5 team members. I mean, that's a solid amount of people. How does this like from a cost perspective? How does this kind of blend into your budget and how can you afford all of this?
So I don't think it's a big surprise for anybody listening. There's cost savings overseas. So everybody that I just talked about makes somewhere in the neighborhood of like $4 to $10 an hour, 4 to 9 something an hour.
Wow.
And so like the first thought is just like I've heard people say, well, that doesn't seem right. That seems almost like you're exploiting people or things like that. The way I try to explain it is, first of all, are all of the team members I just said, they love their job and they make a lot more money working for us than they did before or probably generally would otherwise. They also get to work from home, which is a really big deal because like commute times can be a major problem. They have a lot more flexibility to be available for whether it's kids or family or otherwise. I've heard a stat that the average like annual wages in the Philippines is about 3,500 US per year. So you can do the math. Somebody making $6 an hour US is making significantly more than that. The way that I like to explain it is here in Cleveland, Ohio, this is not an expensive place to live. If I hire, let's just say, somebody to come like answer our phones locally, I might pay them, I don't know, $18 to $20 an hour. If I lived in San Francisco, I cannot hire somebody for $18 to $20 an hour. I'm going to need to pay them, I don't know, but let's just imagine it's closer to like 30 to
Yeah.
do that kind of work. And so it's not like, when I hire somebody locally in Cleveland, it's just a cost of living that is
In
setting
that
those
space.
wages. Exactly.
Yep.
And so it's the same thing. Like the cost of living in the Philippines sets it so that wages are what they are, like I just described. It's not the same thing as if they were making $6 and trying to buy things here in the USA. It's just completely different. And so they're able to have a really good quality of life and a high standard of living at those types of wages. And compared to hiring somebody locally, we're able to save some money.
Totally. No, it makes sense. You're right. You kind of have to reframe your mind to think about it, what that money means
Mhm.
in that environment.
One of the things I want to touch on, which is kind of related to your question, and I want to make sure we have a spot to fit it in because
Yeah.
one of the biggest challenges and misconceptions is around like money. A couple of things. So one, I think if I hire somebody for $6 an hour, that's not even minimum wage in the US. Like, what do we, that's like barely an entry level role. They obviously can't be that skilled. They can't be experienced. We talked about this earlier. That is completely wrong. So we have to like change our mindset that value and the skills that somebody brings aren't necessarily directly tied to their wage when you start thinking overseas. The other thing is like, what is the team locally going to think? If we're going to hire people overseas, are they coming for my job? And it's like, first of all, they can. Like that's going to come down to like the business owner and the management team as to how they want to think about this. That is not how I think about it. I think of it as filling in the gaps and growing without having to wait until I can hire another person at $50,000 a year. I can hire 5 people and where I could not afford to hire 5 people locally. That just doesn't work in the budget. And so, but what it also does for our local team is it allows them to make more money because they're able to have somebody else doing some of the more, let's say, like basic tasks,
Hmm.
like downloading a video out of one platform and uploading it into another. That task, it's hard to pay somebody $25 an hour to do that. It's just not that
Yeah.
valuable, but it still needs to be done. And so if like I can pay somebody else to do that, now I can allow maybe the person locally to spend more time on the phone, giving our clients an amazing experience. And so now that client wants to refer, and now all of a sudden we're going to grow and I can, pay somebody locally a couple bucks more an hour because they're spending more time on high value tasks.
Totally. I mean,
It-
and they're able to elevate the work that they are doing ultimately instead of getting bogged down in those basic need to do's,
for sure.
but don't want to do's.
For sure. It's a lot of what we've learned as business owners, right? We hear, read these books like Buy Back Your Time and, delegation. And like, we need to spend our time on high value activities as the entrepreneur. If I spend all my time answering emails and, checking the mail as a company, we might not grow as much. Probably not the best place as the entrepreneur to spend my time. And so we know that. And so really what this is doing though, is it's getting that same mentality into everybody on the team so that everybody can make more money by leveraging like other people on the team to do different things, allowing them to focus on more high level tasks that are worth more money.
I mean, to me, it seems like there's a ton of advantages in going this direction. Do you, in terms of challenges or disadvantages, does time zone play a big factor here?
I think it's a factor. I think it's less of a concern
Okay.
than I probably thought it was going to be, although it is a concern. We had one team member, so we had somebody in an accounting role, super talented, guy had his bachelor's in accounting, his master's in accounting, and his CPA. That role was crazy. When we put that role out there, I was talking to people that had literally been CFOs. This one guy I talked to, he was a CFO of a company in like the United Arab Emirates. And he was telling me about some like multi-billion-dollar merger deal that he basically did everything on. And I was like, it was intimidating. He was so much smarter than me. I was like, I can't hire you because like I think you're gonna figure out a way to like steal all our money, and I'm not gonna know what happened.
Well, I mean, they say like hire people smarter than yourself for certain parts of the company, but then you're
Sure.
like, you're too smart.
Right.
Like,
I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
exactly. Like we're not even like hitting on,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
communication
And all he
wavelength.
wanted, he was like, I'm gonna make a lot less money, but I just want to be able to work from home. And it was like, I hear you. He was great. And we ended up hiring this other guy who was young, younger guy, in his late 20s maybe. But again, like masters, CPA, all the things. He was super smart. Again, smarter than me, but like at least we could have conversations.
Yeah.
And he worked out well for about 6 months until the time zone became a problem.
Okay.
Essentially, what happened is he got married while he was working here, and his wife's schedule was like more like their local time zone. I think she worked remote for a company that was based in Australia. And so she was working like their like 9 to 5, let's call it, and he was working overnight, and they never saw each other.
Brutal. Yeah, I get
And
that.
so it was just like, yep, I get it. Something's got to give, no problem, no hard feelings. So that's the only like time zone, like casualty, I guess. But the reality is that like it does take some getting used to. It's something that you have to be upfront with in your job postings. There's people overseas that have been working for other companies on like Western time zones, and they're perfectly used to it, and it's just part of like their routine. And it's not an issue. Like for our team members, it's really not an issue. Our marketing assistant, Maria, she does not have to have a full overlap, meaning she doesn't have to work like a full 9 a.m. Eastern to 5 p.m. Eastern our time. The rest of the team does. She gets a little bit more flexibility because, again, a lot of what she does is just like graphic design, video editing, and stuff where it's just like you can do that kind of whenever.
Yeah. It's a scope of work that she's focused on.
For sure. Where there's not like, so, but her and I have meetings where we have calls, I think 2 or 3 times a week, and they're scheduled. And like, I have one today coming up in about an hour or so. And it's just like, it's absolutely on Eastern time. I'm not having conversations with her, like interrupting my evening or, way early in the morning. And so as long as we have that expectation going into it, it seems to have worked really well.
Okay. That's helpful. Any other primary challenges that you would want people to be aware of before kind of entering into this, just so like, all the information's on the table?
One of the common questions is just like around taxes. It's not hard. There's a form, it is called, I think, W-8-BEN, which is like a US form that you have your overseas talent fill out. You should have them fill out like some sort of, contract agreement, just that, essentially just like any other role where it's like, these are the expectations. This is, in terms of like, if I have to call off of work, how do I do that? somebody reaches out, I'm happy to share what we have. Yeah, so you don't have to withhold taxes. Legally, they're just overseas contractors, and they just have to fill out that form that says they do all of their work outside of the U.S., and you just have that on file. I don't know. There's a neat concept actually in the Philippines that I wasn't aware of, which is called a 13th month. So the Philippines is like a very Catholic country. I'm probably not 100%, but there's parts of it at least that are very Catholic. I don't want to pretend to be an expert. Anyways, and so because of that, Christmas is a big deal. And so it's a common custom, I would say, like it's a requirement that's not a requirement, that companies give a bonus for Christmas equal to 1 month's salary. And so they call it the 13th month. And so, from a like custom type of a thing, that was something I had to learn. It's not a big deal. You factor that into your budget. We talked about it. You're still coming out well, and they're super
Yeah.
appreciative. And the messages that we get as a team, that time, and just whenever we do anything nice for them, it's like they're the most appreciative of every little thing that we do, which isn't always the case with our local team. And it's just, I'm the same way. Like we're spoiled Americans, I guess, and
Yeah, I mean,
we take it for
we
granted.
take things for, I would just say we take
Yeah.
things for granted. They're seeing way more opportunity, and more so we expect that opportunity, right?
Yep.
And they're reaching for that. Sometimes for a lot of folks, it's unattainable over there.
So you give somebody a whatever it is, $1,000 bonus or something like that, whatever that math works out to, and it's just like, oh my goodness. I mean, they love
Yeah.
you. I mean, it's crazy, and it's an awesome thing. And so that was something we had to learn, I guess.
To find to find Erna, how did you go through did you like a company or recruiting firm to find her? And then obviously people have since been hired, with her through there, but how did you find her specifically?
Yeah, great question. So I don't think anybody should hire people overseas through a recruiting company. I think it's a big waste of money if you do that.
Cool.
It's similar
Noted.
to like, I wouldn't ever hire somebody locally to answer our phones through a recruiting company. I might if I was looking for a CFO locally, like,
Mhm.
things like that. Overseas though, it's not that challenging. And so the process that we use is there's a website called onlinejobs.ph. That is essentially the Indeed of the Philippines. That's where you post your jobs. There's other ones. I want to say it changed, but I don't remember the name now, but it's called remote.co. I want to say they changed the name of their website, but that's where you can go hire other people from maybe like Central and South America. So going back to like the original question, how did we hire Erna? Post a job on onlinejobs.ph. We have them record the voice. It's the one we use is called Vocaroo. I believe it's VOCAROO. And it's just like a free online audio recording place that, anybody can go use. And we just have a little link in the job ad that says, hey, like as part of your application, you need to send us a link to a 1-minute audio file. If somebody sends us a like minute and 45-second audio file, they're immediately eliminated. Because we need people that can, follow directions and
Right.
all of the things. We have found with almost every job we posted is we get inundated with applicants, and within a couple of days we're pausing it and we're going through and doing all the normal things. It's just all done virtually. So we're going to have a couple interviews with more technical roles, like when we were hiring somebody to do bookkeeping, we did some like Excel type tests and some QuickBooks tests, just to get an idea of like, is this person actually skilled? But when I've hired people locally to do bookkeeping work, and we did the same thing.
So you're going through the hiring process kind of in terms of what factors you're looking for the same way.
Sure.
It's just in a different location.
Yep, exactly. It's just all done virtually over Zoom.
Got it. In terms of and then payment, I mean, in terms of setting up it's direct deposit, it's the same way you do it here.
Yeah. So again, it's really simple. People, I mean, you think it's really hard. A site that a lot of companies would use is called Wise, which is just a big payment platform. We use Gusto for all of our local payroll. And Gusto also allows for international contractor payments. It costs us a little bit more money than going through Wise, but the savings of not having extra software and stuff is worth it.
Cool. And my last question would be, I mean, obviously we more so like on the tools and technology that is like essential for this to work. And, we've hit on systems are critical. Like there are processes and templates that allow for the operations, like basically SOPs for the business to run. In terms of technology needs, was there anything new that you had to implement, especially for Anthony over the phones to make this work properly?
So yeah, I mean, you have to be set up for over the computer work, right? So you have to have a voice over IP phone system. There's a lot of them out there. We use one called Just Call. There's like Ring Central is a really big one, but yeah, there's tons of them that are all very good. So you have to have that, which I think honestly, it's just good business. Even if you're doing it locally, you're probably going to save money doing that. Aside from that, like Slack or some sort of communication platform, Microsoft Teams or something where you can communicate as a team over chat easily. And then documenting systems and processes. So there's a lot of different places you can do that. We use Notion. I would say it is definitely the best one. You could get the job done in other platforms, even like Google Docs and stuff like that. Notion is just awesome. It's just really easy to work in and build out like some visually appealing and easy to use things, I guess, documents. So Notion for that. We use Loom to record, like screen record videos all the time. That's how we like document a lot of how to do things. There's a place or whatever software that we used to use. We don't use it as much, but called Tango. What Tango does, it's very similar in like its screen recording, but it's like every time you click on something, it like records that. And so instead of you like when you're saying like, hey, okay, so you click on the the file menu and then you go down
Yeah.
here and you click on print, it's actually like in a written format, it's creating like a Word document essentially that says step 1, click on file, step 2, click on print, or
Oh,
again,
that's nice.
that's a really stupid example, but it's that type of a thing. So if I'm walking somebody through like how to create an invoice in QuickBooks, we would do it both ways. So I'm going to do a video so that you can watch this, whatever 5 to 10 minute video of me doing it. And then while I made that video, I also have Tango running, which is creating a written form of that, which is almost like a transcript. But it's like taking a screen capture picture of like my mouse over the button for that thing, kind of like zoomed in. So check that out. It's we used it for a while. Once we got a lot of like the basic stuff done, we stopped paying for it. But it wasn't very expensive. I would say when it comes to like documenting processes, the biggest thing I wish somebody would have told me early on is you don't like my thought was once I get all of our systems documented, we're going to be ready to hire some overseas talent and this is going to be awesome. And then what I quickly realized was I had that all backwards. I'm going to go hire some overseas talent and I'm going to get them to document all of our systems and processes. And it was just like, oh, like I just need to come up with how do we document the systems and processes? I need to create one system, how to document systems. And then once I did that, it was just like, cool, now I can hire somebody and let them go document all of our systems. And so it's like, that was the big unlock. That was, and so that's a
Yeah.
lot of what Erna's role has been for the last couple of years.
I love it. I mean, to me, this is so interesting. It seems like a no-brainer for companies to think about in terms of, their hiring plans and what are the things that are just not getting done in your business that if you could, I mean, it's almost like you think, well, do we need someone to do part-time work? Even that is tricky to get someone because you need someone the full day. I mean, part-time work only covers the work that especially on a customer facing level. So this is such a really great opportunity and it seems like a win-win, not only for your business, but also for, the team members that you have in the Philippines and Indonesia. I mean, the opportunities that they're now having access to.
Yeah, again, and our local team. I think that's like the big thing too, is
Yeah.
our local team was really like we had some serious conversations with people about like I'm worried you're gonna replace me with somebody overseas. And I didn't do a good job beforehand of like having the preempting those conversations. But once they happen, it was like, whoa, 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 no, that's not it at all. Like you are going to get to do other more fun, cool things here. And like you're gonna have more responsibility because we're growing as a company. Like we're not, if we were staying the same size, then sure, I could see that, but that is not the plan here. So that's also part of it too. Really is like a win-win-win.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing. This was so, so helpful. I mean, not only just from like the concept of how it works, but also like the details of how you guys actually implemented and made it work. And it sounds like you got an awesome team of folks, not only locally, but also abroad. So good stuff. Are you planning on hiring more?
We are, yeah, for sure. We want to hire a second person to answer the phones here and help with more of like the outbound. We'd like to get into some more commercial work, which requires some more just like outreach kind of stuff. And for sure, yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of like figuring, like documenting what is the job and where are the issues and things like that. So for sure.
Cool. Well, Michael, thank you so much. I appreciate your time as always. And I look forward to sharing this. I would imagine that you have kind of changed the tide for several folks who were maybe not considering this as an option, this is definitely something to be considered.
Yeah, happy to chat. Anybody wants help with it, I love talking about it. It's been a big unlock for me. I got help from somebody else, and happy to kind of pay that forward if anybody wants to reach out.
And if you want to hear more from Michael and John Bryant, you should plug your podcast real quick while
Yeah,
I have you here.
sure. Yeah, so John and I run the Price Sell Paint podcast, which is really just geared towards like sales and estimating in the painting industry. So whether it's business owners that are in that sales role or specifically like sales reps, we're trying to really serve that niche and provide some education and content, and bring in guests on to talk about how they do so well in their roles.
It's great. You
Yeah,
are
thanks.
busy. You are running a company, got a podcast, coaching baseball teams.
Well, not without a good team. That's how it,
That's
again,
how
that's the
that's how it
key. I
works.
mean, yeah, for sure. Hopefully we're, if it looks like, I'm making it look easy, it's only because I've got really good people that are helping out. So
Yeah. Go. Erna's doing great work, and
for sure.
she's helping you manage all of
She's,
that.
yeah. And managing me, that's the hardest job.
Yeah.
So
Managing up is
that's
difficult,
right.
but it's very necessary sometimes. Well, Michael, thank you, and
Yeah.
until next time.
Thank you.